Also a rather different video this time on how to write an essay, an academic essay, a philosophical essay, because I've been thinking, why should I only tell the students in Birkbeck and Warwick and other places I've taught how to write an essay? I could just tell anyone the secret on how to write a good essay who stumbles upon this humble channel of mine. And because there is a trick, there is a method, shall we say, not a trick, there's a very good method to structure your thoughts. It's a very good method of how you can construct an argument, not mere opinion, and actually get to say in a short essay, which means attempt, what it is that you mean to say and actually argue for it. And that's the most important skill to learn in terms of writing, because I think it's crucial, because once you know how to write an essay well and argue well, you will more easily, better present arguments also in speaking. You will be actually, I think, be better at presenting arguments and be free from more, rhetoric. So an essay is an attempt. It attempts to argue for or against something. And the easiest way to approach this, or the simplest way to approach this, is what is my argument? That's the first question you have to ask yourself. So, for example, well, first you get clear on what it is that you'd like to say. Right? Let's take the example of Bishop Berkeley, for whatever reason, George Berkeley. In this essay, I will argue that Bishop Berkeley is an immaterialist. That's a completely non-refutable point. But what I've said here, that's very important. In the beginning, when you start writing essays for the first time, just state in the introduction, right? State in the introduction what it is that you'd like to say. Actually, it's easiest, and I've told this my students every single year, and usually those who pick up on it, it helps them to write essays that do well, not just in terms of marking, but actually that help them to get clear on what it is that they're trying to say. In this essay, I will argue that P proposition. In this essay, I will argue that P. I will argue that Nietzsche was a nihilist. I will argue that Plato's theory of forms fails to account for X, Y, and Z. That's the first line. That's the introduction. In this essay, I will argue that P, propositional claim. Second sentence, this is because 1, 2. Give 2 reasons. That's your introduction. And you're right there in the gist of it. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to construct an argument. This is beginner's level to get into the mode of writing and arguing. Arguing, again, is not doxa. It's not mere opinion. You can see opinion when people say something like, we all agree. Or the opposite, the inverse of that is, how can you not agree with? How do you not see? That's opinion. That's opinion speaking. That's doxa speaking. Doxa wants to overpower, doesn't argue for anything. By the way, argumentare, as Indo-European argument, has an Indo-European root, which means to shine forth, to bring to the fore. So an argument sets something forth and lets something shine, of course. Best case scenario, lets truth shine and doesn't just argue for arguing's sake. That's another rhetorical method, of course, but that's not what we're after. We're not trying to be philosophers who argue for something that's true, and not sophists who just try and construct arguments to win over another argument. But in the pure technical methodological sense, let's stick with this. First paragraph is the introduction, which begins with saying, in this essay, I will argue that Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the same is a reinterpretation of time. This is because 1, 2. That's the introduction. Then you move on to the first paragraph. Now think about how long is this essay. When you start writing essays in the beginning, it's good to focus on just one aspect of what it is that you're trying to say. Just one aspect. Don't go all over the place. Just stick to one argument, one claim, and argue for that claim. And discuss the claim a bit by going back and forth dialectically. So set a target of 1,000 words, maybe 2,000 words even, but only if those 2,000 words are actually necessary. If you give historical information about Nietzsche lived from yada to yada, his mother was mean to him. Who cares? Anyone can read this on Wikipedia. But now what we're looking for, after the first paragraph, after the introduction, you move on to the first paragraph. So let's say this is an essay of 1,000 words. Overall, you will have probably 4 paragraphs, maybe 5 at maximum. That's including the introduction and including the conclusion. The paragraphs in between, they should flow. Really, there should be a flow to what it is that you're saying. And you will need this for any kind of presentation. When you, for example, maybe you're a student at a university, no one's teaching you how to academically write. And this is something else. So I'm talking about essay writing, a very simple essay writing, not about academic citation. I might make a video on that too, on how to cite and quote properly, and actually how to write a bibliography, which is very important just for your own hygiene, to know what it is that you are talking about, where it is that you get ideas and thoughts from. But now the first paragraph will introduce the first major claim that you're trying to make. So you will introduce that propositional claim in a clear sentence, and then that paragraph will stick to that thought and only that thought and argue for it or against it, depending on what it is that you're trying to argue, and then have a sort of a mini conclusion at the end of it, if you like. So you conclude the paragraph on a sentence that sums up the claim and what it is that you've argued for. Or another way, of course, because something that could happen while writing, is that this opens up another question. So you could end a paragraph also on a question which necessarily leads on to the next paragraph. If it's not a question, if it ends on a sort of a mini conclusion, that mini conclusion will be picked up. You could just say, but on the other hand, alternatively, right? You look at it from the other angle, because then you make it's actually clear to yourself that you're arguing and not just spitting out doxa. And then of course you argue, and I argue that, and you refrain from saying, we all agree. How can anyone not agree that this is wrong? Which is moralizing. So you try and stay at die Sache. An argument cares for die Sache, for the sake, the issue at hand, the question at hand, and not opinion. And then the next paragraph moves on necessarily, logically from the first paragraph, introduces another claim, argues for that claim, and then ends on a mini conclusion again, all over again. And the conclusion, the overall conclusion, comes back to the initial claim. This is why in the beginning you say, in this essay I will argue that P, right? Because even at just 1,000-word essays, very often what I've seen is that students get lost. And I certainly got lost when I started writing essays many, many years ago at university level. You get lost. You forget what it is that I'm actually trying to say, because it's all flying to you. You've read something, someone else has said this. And of course, while you're writing, you should not open tab after tab after tab after tab looking something up. No, while you're writing, you are just writing the essay. So in the conclusion, you come back to the initial claim. So it's very easy. You just say, in this paper, I have tried to argue that Bishop Berkeley was an immaterialist. In this paper, I have tried to argue that Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the same formulates an ethics. That's Simon Critchley claims that. And then you say, I have found that. Or you say something like, in fact, in fact, what I have shown, come back to what you have said, and just summarize in one concise paragraph what it is that you have argued for. This is 4 or 5 sentences maximum. And then you have another 1 or 2 sentences where you state what, for example, is lacking, right? Nothing is absolute, especially not 1,000 or even 2,000 or even 3,000 word essay isn't absolute. It won't be saying everything. And what it is that's lacking, what it is that should have been, or in a more extended version of the essay, should be treated. And this is just intellectual honesty towards yourself, that you cannot simply respond to everything all at once. And this is a roadmap to get into the mode of essay writing. If you do it like that, you cultivate a certain, a way of writing that helps you think through something in a concise manner, which is very crucial in order to understand more difficult texts, and actually to write then at some point more freely, as for example someone like Nietzsche. But Nietzsche was a very well trained writer before he became the man who scribbled into his notebooks, right? So this is something I would really recommend you as a roadmap of using. It's helped me, it's helped many students that have personal comments from when I told them this kind of method. It's a standard method in academia, but it's very, very helpful also outside of academia. It's not just for academic essays, it's for anything you have to write. If you're a copywriter, etc., it can be very helpful, even just for oneself, to structure and order one's thoughts and make sure that what it is that you're saying isn't just coming back to cliches and platitudes, but am I actually arguing for or against something? Am I making a point that I'm then backing up? That's something that you can see. And is it not just contingent all over the place, but is it actually stringent? Right? Is it actually coherent? So yes, thank you very much I might make more of these videos, I'm not sure yet. Thanks very much for listening, for watching, for sharing the videos, for supporting the channel on Patreon. And I wish you all the best. Keep well.